Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, our guest is Shannon Procise, who's the president of the Business Acceleration Network. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
So what got you into networking and kind of the public relations side of things?
So I was 19. I was rear-ended at the age of 19, and I had this shoulder surgery that left me paralyzed, and I only had one arm that worked. Oh, wow. And I ended up signing up for a Qigong class and was able to move full range in my arms after 2 months. And I realized that there's this ocean of possibility within our mind that can heal our body. And I became, but there's not many solutions that are mainstream that really people know about. So I became obsessed with getting the message out to the masses that to truly make an impact.
Right. So, obviously that's very tragic that happened, but again, it created an opportunity for you that before this, you probably didn't realize that there was.
At all. I had no idea that, I went from depressed and dependent on other people to inspired and motivated to really make a difference.
Great. So what do you guys do at Business Acceleration Network?
I love that question because we're a trailblazing community with conscious business owners who are here to make an impact. What we stand for is we're reinventing community and collaboration in entrepreneurship. We have mentors, we have startups, C-suite, all different levels of businesses that come together and really work in community and in collaboration to accelerate their business.
So it sounds, you say it sounds like you're a matchmaker.
Yes, I love matchmaking.
So you kind of have gotten the nickname and everything else of having the $1 million Rolodex. Tell us about that.
So in my background, I've produced over 400 events. Somebody keeps saying you need to up that because there's more now with COVID and everything, going virtual. Right. In that time, I had the opportunity to meet celebrities, people that are, authors, speakers, coaches, and really, I'm even friends with the $1 billion man from the Home Shopping Network. So that's where, doing events, producing events, attending events was really what helped develop that Rolodex and those relationships.
Right. So, in dealing with, and you've done a lot of stuff with helping people that have had crisis in their businesses and their life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So we all have those hiccups. We all have those moments, and just like the being paralyzed, it's like sometimes we don't know what's on the other side until we get through it. And so often, what I love helping people do is really navigate that, whether it be through, management of the message that goes out and really shifting the message and the strategy to do that. And then also the place of where can we align and how can we overcome and overpower what that piece may be. And much like what you do, where you help people strategically plan, right? It's like, it's better to talk to you. One thing I know about you in finances is better to talk to you ahead of time and kind of plan and put together a strategy. It's the same thing with this. When things come up, it's like get together with people and look at what are the options and how do we navigate this with a plan.
So when it comes to the crisis situation, things like that, and I'm saying crisis, it may not necessarily be a crisis like you had physically, but it could be something that a paradigm that has shifted in your business. We all dealt with COVID, and how we responded to that was different. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people make when they have a issue like this?
I think the common thing that people want to do that I consider a mistake is kind of shove it under the carpet and not really lean into it and deal with it in a way. And yes, there are times when we got to keep our focus here, because sometimes that can be a distraction, right? Like some things are just distractions, and it really isn't that big of a deal. But a lot of times that opportunity when there is a crisis to lean in, ask for help, can be really like we should not be going with things alone. We should have people that support us, hold the vision with us, advise us to go forward. So I would say, the really big mistake is just not dealing with it, kind of, turning a blind eye of like, I don't see that.
Right. I think, again, I'm going to keep going back to COVID-19, because that was something that everybody had to deal with. And I think sometimes, people may make mistakes with this also when they have that knee-jerk reaction. When something like this happens, I mean, who is it that we should be trying to reach out to help us put together the right message?
Well, I think that definitely if it is the message, having somebody that deals with public relationship, crisis management, mitigation. I also think it's important to have a legal counsel there to advise, because even as a PR person who's dealt with a ton of attorneys, every time I learn something new. So those are key people. And then also, if you have somebody on your team that deals with your brand, I think if you have that triage, then you really have that support of somebody that can help write the message that's done this before, that's strategic. And then also you have the person that's in your inner team that understands the brand, understands the message, can really keep that core message and value there. And then the legal is just to make sure that you're not digging yourself a little hole that's deeper. I have a great story of somebody who, I'd love to share.
Tell us.
Yeah, she was in the middle of a workman's comp case, and here locally she was producing a women's conference, and all of a sudden she wakes up one morning, and it was like a month or two before the event, and the front page of our paper had really just attacked her and saying that she was doing a workman's comp fraud.
Oh.
And I mean, they named her event, they did all of this stuff, but she was being attacked on what was happening. And so it was really beautiful to first work with her and go, okay, sometimes media, the fact that they listed her event, to me, I looked at that like, wow, that's free publicity. Like,
Right,
this is
right.
really great. But also getting to that place of looking at what is the message we can convey. She was like, do I cancel my event? I go, no, they put your event in the media. But we were able to really look at the strategy, look at the message, and sometimes that stuff hurts, right? Sometimes when we're misunderstood or we're seeing things wrong. So we did also work on how do we overcome that piece? I have to tell you, when we were done, her event sold out ahead of time. I mean, it was just really remarkable that there's something that she came to see, and most of us are programmed of that crisis management means that it's going downhill and you're going to be in the grave. Right. A lot of times with the right strategy and awareness and commitment to get through it and face it, right? Like that, not turning the other cheek, that it can be a huge blessing.
Right. With something like that, is there a certain time frame that you need to respond by, or is that on more of a case by case basis?
Yeah, I think it's definitely case by case. But Gary, to speak to that, I think that you always have to be careful in life not to respond in reaction. Mm-hmm. That's where we get into trouble, is when we respond, when we have high emotional charge, when we're in reaction. I think that it's really important to pause, right? And really important to get the input so that when you respond, that you're responding with power and strategy and intention. I mean, I have so many stories of crisis management. Right. And I remember the girl, she is a YouTube star. She was actually on Apprentice, or what is that show that he used to have?
I believe it was The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. So this woman makes these YouTube videos, and she made this YouTube video that it was fun. It was about ninjas, but she had massive attacks on what was going on. And so when we worked together, I mean, it was like if you could have heard her, like she was just on the phone crying, like, I didn't, like, this is not racist, I'm not making fun of people,
Right.
like it was a misinterpreted, misunderstood thing. And so in that pause, we again came up with, like, what's the strategy? How are you going to deal with this? What are you going to say in that response video? How are you going to, who can you partner with? Like,
Right.
who can you partner with that can speak in that, in that culture on your behalf. And so that pause is really important. Now, you don't want to pause for a month or 2 or 3 or
Right.
things like that. It does need to be timely, but it's best not to do a knee-jerk reaction.
So going back to your first story that you were telling us about, I mean, to me, when I see, if something like that were to come out to me in the paper and somebody were to come to me, a reporter or somebody like that, they're going to ask you to respond. Obviously, at that point, you're not prepared. I mean, how do you handle that?
That's a really great question. So I would say to them, I would be happy to answer some questions. I'm still getting some, working with my team and my legal counsel to figure out what's our best strategy. And here's my card and here's my number, and give me a few days, and I would be happy to respond. So
Okay.
it's okay, much like I tell people when you get on an interview, if somebody asks you a question that just doesn't align, it's okay to say, Gary, that's a great question. What I'd like to talk about is this, right? Like,
Right.
we always have self-dominion over where things go. We don't realize it. We're always told if somebody asks you a question, you have to answer. I learned in real estate and dealing with legal stuff, you don't have to answer.
Right.
You have the ability to take charge of that.
Right. Yeah. I think that because I know lots of times people ask me stuff from a tax perspective and legal perspective, and I'll tell them. I mean, if I don't know, I can tell them I don't know. But even like we were talking earlier, it was, it goes back to everybody's case is a little bit different. So you definitely have to look at that. Um, because all of us think we know everything as business owners. And that this is something that you know we never would have imagined that COVID-19 would have happened. This lady probably would have never thought something would have come out in the paper about her. So how do you go about getting that team that you're talking about, putting together? I mean, because it's almost like you need to do this ahead of time, so in case if something ever happens, you have them, because otherwise I'm going through trying to interview people and find the right person and stuff like that, which is delaying your time of being able to respond in the right way.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really like about you, Gary, sorry, I'm going to take a little pivot, is that
It's okay.
you really are about preparation and team and working together ahead of time. I love what you shared with me with taxes, of how most of that is a history, and you like to
Right.
work with people in the future. Well, it's the same thing with this. It is really good to have those key team players that you can call on, and those relationships in place, so that if something ever happens. Now, if you don't, I would suggest that you reach out to some of your top business advisors, call the Chamber of Commerce, call your attorney. I find that recommendations from people I know tend to be really the best people to get it from.
Right.
And a lot of attorneys tend to know a lot of people. I don't know about you. I
Yeah.
know you deal with attorneys. It's like,
Yeah.
I've been amazed that I might call them for legal, but then they go, you need to talk to this person and this person and this person, that can be really powerful. So don't, if you don't have it, start building it now. Build your team. Start being
Right.
prepared, because it's good just to, as you say, to have that in place ahead of time.
Now, when you're
Or call your accountant, because you
yeah.
meet, I just
Oh
thought
yeah.
about this. It's like you meet
Yeah.
everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you're okay, I'm looking to find, a PR person to be able to help me which to me is different than a branding person.
Yes.
How do you determine, I mean, because when I talk to people about finding attorneys, I'm saying, okay, you need to find somebody that practices what you do. They don't do 25 things, they do whatever it is. Same thing with financial advisors, estate attorneys, and things like that. How is that with how do we find that in a public relations person?
It's such a good question. And part of why I wrote my book and some of the things I've done, because there are so many people right now that have hired PR individuals. They pay them 10 grand a month. And when I look at what they're, like, oh, I paid them 10, I've been paid them 10 grand a month for 6 months. I got one press release picked up, or I got on one podcast. And so I know we can't be a master of everything, but I feel like having a baseline of an education so that you can see their work and determine for yourself,
Right.
is this a good fit or not? So I really think looking at some of their work, and I have this thing of, you ask for referrals. So Gary, I would say, hey, Gary, can ask your friends first. Gary, I get on the phone with you. Gary, hey, I know that, give me some 3 recommendations. Well, when you gave me those 3 recommendations, I will ask each person, who else do you know that's worked with Gary? Will you
Right.
give me their name and number? Because you're going to give me your favorite people, right?
Right.
But
or people in your industry, right?
Yeah, they may be able to share somebody else that's worked with it. But I found that, and part of why I love educating people just on the basics, because I want you to be able to look at a tagline. Does it sizzle? I want you to be able to look at, how are they quoting you as an expert? What is their marketing strategy? Are they just focused on social media, or are they, what is their skill set? Because a lot of individuals are not getting results. And at the
Right.
end of the day, for me, it's all about the results you get. And that is tangible. You can see when you're doing PR, the direct results of what's happening.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the one of the important things is be able to, and lots of times people will do this with their employees, but when they hire an outside expert, they don't, is making sure that you have something that you can measure.
Yeah.
Because if it's like, hey, dude, I want you to come do my PR stuff for me. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? What are you trying to accomplish with the PR? The press releases and stuff like that. It's like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish with that? And I think that that's where lots of times people make the mistake, because they're told, oh, you need to go get this. Well, why do I need that?
I have 2 more things that I think too, if I can add.
Yes.
The other thing is, I really look at one of my due diligence friends who was a CIA. He said, one of the best questions to ask somebody before you hire them is, how do I do my due diligence on you?
Right.
And let them tell you how to do the due diligence. But the other piece is, I always look at, what is their intake form? What is their intake process? Because if they're really getting a holistic picture of you, they better have a process of you filling out a form, or you giving them information and things like that. I have to say, one of the biggest things is, so many people are building websites right now. And I don't know about you, Gary, but early on in my business career, I got burned a lot. And so I learned that if people don't gather the right information and ask the right questions, they're not going to be able to deliver the outcome.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
Oh,
I
yeah,
really look
definitely.
at their process of what information are they gathering, and are they asking the right questions?
Right, right. And I think sometimes, because I know when I first started out, I was this way. It was like you were afraid to ask the questions. It's just like, because you were trying to get somebody's business, and you were afraid to say, okay, for me to do my job, I got a mountain of stuff that you need to give me. And they were afraid for that, because they were afraid that client or potential client's going to be like, and this is too much work to become a client. And I think it's one of those things where I'm going to say you can almost do it in phases, you know, in the fact that, okay, here, this is what I need to get from you to kind of help you with at the beginning. But then if you choose, you know, if we choose to work with each other, then this is the rest of that I need. You know, which sometimes that is to dig a little bit further in. But I have definitely found over the years now, that you get a little bit more confident in it. And you're right. I mean, that is something that if somebody's doing PR for me, you know, they need to know me, not just, you know, what they find on a website about me. They need to know me. They need to know, you know, what my business is about, what the employees are about, what they feel, and stuff like that. I think that that's definitely important. And again, going back to your point earlier, it's like, you know, it may make sense to find somebody before you're actually in that crisis that kind of knows you. So when you do need something, you can pick up the phone and they're there and they already know you.
Yes.
What from a, you know, because you do the networking side of things also, and I'm a firm believer of you get out of something what you put into it. So when people are trying to network, I mean, I think we've all over our time have gone to networking events, meetings, lunches, whatever you want to call them, and it just seems like it's speed dating. And it's just everybody, oh, give me your card. Oh man, I got a ton of people I can send to you. And then it's crickets. Can you kind of talk a little bit about, I'm going to say true networking in the way to make it positive for you and where you really get something out of it?
Yeah, I at the Business Acceleration Network, we have 6 accelerators that we talk about. And in this phase, we talk about treating everybody as if they're significant and giving first. And so it may not be an immediate give a client, but I found that when we show up with that, really, it's kind of, we tell people when they come to our events, it's different. You need to drop your agenda of getting a client. You need to show up 100% like, oh my gosh, Gary is the person that's going to help me. And he's the most important person in the room. And I know that he's the one, right? He's the most significant one. And so when we show up that way at a networking group, first off, we stand out.
Right.
People remember us. It creates a buzz. Sometimes there's this concept of if we give, people sometimes have this thing of like, I owe you, or I got to give you something else.
Right.
So I believe treating everyone as if they're significant and give first, give a lead, give a free gift, give anything that you can give, then
Right.
that's a great way to network. And I know there's so many strategies, but that's what's worked for me. And it's amazing. It's like people will come back 3 years later and I don't remember them, like, oh my gosh, and I remember at this lunch and you introduced me to this person, and do it right away. That's the other piece, is if you're going to give a lead, a lot of times people get nervous, Gary, about like, I don't know you. And so I'm a little nervous about introducing you. I always tell people, hey, I just met this great, incredible accountant, Gary. I don't know if you're a good fit, right?
Right.
But when I was talking to him, your name came up and I wanted you two to meet and see what happens, right? So it gets me off the hook,
Right.
but it creates that magic. And when we do those referrals right away, it's, they don't forget that. They remember you in networking.
Right. I agree. All right, we've gone over a lot of stuff, and you and I could sit here and talk for
I
hours.
know. I love talking to you.
That's for sure. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
This whole concept of free publicity. So I think, right now, a lot of people, free publicity or syndicated publicity, I think a lot of people don't understand that every single one of them, there is thousands of dollars of marketing out there right now with your name on it. And so you don't have to be a writer, you don't have to be a nonprofit. All of those are myths and illusions. There's, you just have to create a compelling story. If it's something you can tie to current news or current challenges or current things like that, have a media list in place. Like we're always thinking, oh, our contact list, which is important. But for me, my media list is just as important to be able to pitch those stories and share that. We all have stories that it could be like a faucet turning on your business and that credibility for your business too.
Wow, that's great. If people, want to talk to you about that or like what they've heard and they want to talk to you and kind of get that PR person in their pocket now, how can they reach out to you and talk to you?
Yeah. So if you go to meetshannon.com, you'll find all my social media. You'll find my calendar. You can even text me everything, even some gifts. I have my media, or if you go to mediamagicbook.com, everything there is at meetshannon.com.
Great. Shannon, really appreciate your time today. I've learned a lot. I think that there's so many things that people need to talk to you about, and be able to develop this, because even just talking about the free publicity that's out there, like you said, people don't know. So I think that that's something as business owners, we really need to try to take advantage of.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you for having me. And thank you for what you do. I have to say a lot of, I don't mean to pick on women, but a lot of women are not building their wealth, or they're a little nervous, or at least people that I've met over the many years of working with businesses. And to have somebody like you that can look not only at the business and the personal and the financial realm, we have to lean into that. That is one of the greatest gifts that we can do for ourselves and our family, is like, if you're nervous about it, find somebody like you, Gary, to be on your team, to guide you, to advise you, and really help you on that journey. Because the more we make numbers and make that at the forefront of our wealth building, our business building, the more successful we're going to be.
right. I agree 100% with you. And I think that's something that every business owner really needs to do. And it helps empower them. It really does.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much for your time. Our guest this week was Shannon Procise, who's the president of Business Acceleration Network. I will see you guys next week.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.